Memory is violence. Every time you recall something, you're holding a knife against reality's throat. You're carving truth from illusion, cutting through the comfortable haze of forgetfulness. Memory isn't safe. It isn't sweet. It's not your grandmother's soft, smiling nostalgia. It's an insurrection, a whispered rebellion that echoes in the dark corners of your mind. It's the weapon that history hands down generation after generation, sharpened on tales of triumph and loss, heroism and betrayal. Memory, this merciless act of recollection, is exactly why you're sitting here, right now, listening to my voice. Ask yourself, why do we bother telling stories at all? Why do we dredge up the past, revisiting battles we didn't fight, mourning losses we never personally suffered, rejoicing in victories achieved long before we drew our first breath? Because stories aren't just words. Stories are what remain when flesh rots away, when buildings crumble and empires collapse. They're resilient, ruthless. Stories are what we cling to when everything else fades. They're the last stubborn evidence of our existence, and they're always, always armed. Think about sagas, the Icelandic epic spun from blood feuds and brutal survival, narratives etched in violence yet also steeped in wisdom. These ancient stories aren't merely entertainment, they're survival manuals, coded messages whispered across generations. They remind us who we were, who we are, and who we might yet become. Sagas are mirrors held up to our collective souls, reflecting back images of both beauty and brutality. They're honest in a way modern society rarely dares to be, capturing humanity's complexities in all their raw and ragged glory. So why Iceland? Why these particular stories? Maybe it's something about that land itself, volatile, volcanic, unforgiving. Icelandic sagas emerge from a landscape forged by fire and ice, where existence itself is constantly under siege. In such harsh environments, memory becomes essential for survival. You don't have the luxury to forget mistakes. You can't afford ignorance. In Iceland, memory becomes as critical as shelter, food, or warmth, an intangible weapon wielded ruthlessly against death and oblivion. But this episode isn't just about the sagas. It's about you, your stories, your memories, your struggles. Because you're crafting your own saga every waking moment. Each breath, each decision, each quiet battle fought in secret, it all matters. Your life is not mundane, it's epic. It's rich with drama, contradiction, tragedy, and triumph. You're not separate from these old tales. You're their direct descendant, carrying forward their legacy with every heartbeat. Like it or not, you're a storyteller too. Today, we'll explore the intricate, often volatile relationship between memory and identity. We'll uncover how ancient sagas teach us to navigate our modern world, how stories shape and sometimes shatter our sense of self. We'll examine the brutal truth. Memory can liberate or imprison us, depending on how we wield it. But before we plunge into these depths, understand this clearly. Storytelling isn't passive. It isn't safe. Each narrative you accept or reject alters your reality, reshapes your identity. You're complicit, whether you like it or not, in a grand conspiracy of memory and narrative. You decide, consciously or unconsciously, which tales define you, which legends you perpetuate, and which lies you choose to believe or destroy. You are, in short, wielding memory as a weapon every day of your life. So settle in, because today we'll journey through landscapes both external and internal, exploring how the land itself holds memory, how words calcify into identity, and how memory serves as a weapon both cruel and compassionate. You'll confront your own saga, your quiet drama, your personal epic that deserves to be recognized, understood, and embraced. Today's episode is a rebellion against forgetting. It's a celebration of stories that refuse to die. It's a call to recognize the epic in your own seemingly ordinary existence. Because we don't merely tell stories, we live them, we breathe them, we are them. And today, together, we'll dare to remember.
835 feet.
Listen closely. You'll hear the soil beneath your feet whispering. Lean down, press your ear to the earth, and the murmurs come like restless ghosts, shivering in the dark loam, trapped between worlds. Soil is memory, the quiet chronicle of everything that's come before. Every footfall, every bloodshed, every whispered prayer into the dawn has seeped deep into the ground, laying history in sediment and decay, silently awaiting discovery. But what is memory really, if not a story whispered from one generation to the next, endlessly retold, reshaped, evolving with each telling? The land remembers because it must, because forgetting would erase identity, because stories aren't merely words strung into sentences, they're the vertebrae of our collective backbone, the threads that stitch the fabric of communities together. Stories tell us who we were, who we might yet become, and who we must never again dare to be. So as you press your fingertips into the soil, you're reaching into the marrow of a world shaped by the relentless repetition of survival, struggle, and loss. The earth remembers all the brutal details we prefer to forget. The quiet tragedies tucked away into forest shadows and mountain caves. The secret betrayals buried beneath layers of pavement and progress. The slow erosion of promises made, sworn, and abandoned. Every inch of ground is a palimpsest, inked and overwritten with the bloody scrawls of our ancestors' hopes, their fury, their desperation. It's an endless novel, written not by any single author but by time itself, patiently recording our human dramas in its cold, dispassionate ledger. Think of Iceland, a land shaped by volcanic fury and glacial patience, where sagas are etched not only into parchment but into stone and moss, into fjords carved by ice that crept forward and receded with the slow rhythm of a sleeping giant's breath. Icelanders will tell you the land itself holds memories, that a particular hillside whispers of battles long since past, that certain rocks sing softly of love lost, love betrayed, love avenged. To them, land isn't inert. It's alive with the echoes of their ancestors' voices resonating across generations. Now consider your own hometown. Walk the streets, touch the walls. What quiet dramas have unfolded there? That abandoned house at the edge of town, shuttered and sinking beneath the weight of neglect. What cries still reverberate inside its peeling walls? The fields outside town limits, tranquil now, but what ancient blood seeps silently through roots and grass, staining the earth with invisible ink? You tread casually upon soil saturated with secrets, unknowingly disturbing the sleeping ghosts of your community's past. These aren't merely forgotten details, they're the hidden narrative threads that bind you to everyone who has walked before. Indigenous peoples understand this in a way modern digital cultures never will. To many Native American tribes, memory is not simply stored in stories recited around the fire, it's engraved directly into the land. To speak of a place is to conjure its stories, to reanimate its spirits. Every mountain, every river, every canyon holds a living biography, a storied past made tangible and sacred. To erase these landmarks, to pave them over, rename them, exploit them, is not just desecration, it is the intentional destruction of memory itself, a calculated forgetting, a quiet genocide of narrative and identity. Yet memory persists stubbornly. Even when entire cultures vanish beneath waves of colonization or conquest, their stories linger in the echoes of place names, faint traces in local customs, secret symbols hidden in plain sight. Ancient footpaths become highways, sacred springs become bottled commodities, but beneath the veneer of modernization, the land continues to speak in cryptic fragments. Listen carefully. You might hear whispers in the leaves, rustling protests in the wind, faint murmurs bubbling up from a streambed. If history books are the official versions, sanitized, neatly organized, endorsed by whoever holds power, then the land itself is an underground resistance, offering alternative truths in muddy fingerprints and fossilized bones. There's authenticity here, raw and unmediated by politics or propaganda. The land is impartial yet deeply personal. It doesn't care who wins or loses, only that truth be preserved somewhere in its silent embrace. Soil and stone keep score, patiently awaiting their chance to whisper forgotten truths to anyone willing to listen. But the land doesn't just recall tragedy. It remembers celebrations, rituals, births. It remembers laughter echoing through valleys and songs drifting through summer air. Places become imbued with the warm glow of repeated gatherings, annual festivities that gradually become tradition. Each place where human joy has erupted repeatedly and persistently becomes permanently imprinted with hope, a quiet defiance against despair. Memory is complex, richly textured, never monochromatic. It paints in shades both dark and radiant. And perhaps that's the most haunting, beautiful truth about memory itself, its complexity. No single story is absolute. Each memory is fluid, shifting with perspective and time. Walk a battlefield centuries after the final sword was sheathed and you might sense not hatred but sorrow and loss. Visit a place of devastation and beneath ruin you might uncover resilience. Memories evolve. They bend and twist with the people who carry them forward, adapting to fit the needs of each new generation. Memory, after all, is not static. It's dynamic. It's alive. So we live not merely upon land, but within layers of narrative, stories that cradle and shape us without our even realizing it. We are characters in sagas we didn't author, heroes and villains in epics unfolding silently around us. We inherit trauma we did not earn, joys we did not create, yet we carry them forward nonetheless. Our identities are bound irrevocably to these stories, and it's only when we recognize the land's voice, when we truly listen to its whispered testimony, that we begin to grasp who we truly are. In recognizing that the land remembers, we understand our profound responsibility, not merely to preserve these memories, but to interpret them responsibly, humbly, and honestly. To sift through layers of soil and history with careful hands, recognizing that we too will someday become part of this eternal narrative, our own triumphs and tragedies compressed into quiet whispers, embedded into the earth itself. Words are bones. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Stories form the skeleton beneath our skin, rigid, persistent, unyielding. Once uttered, they calcify, embedding themselves deep inside our marrow. They linger, outliving flesh, sinew, and desire. Speak enough words, weave them into tales potent enough, and you'll build a body that endures beyond death. Like bones unearthed from ancient graves, stories persist, recognizable fragments pulled from the earth, truth stubbornly demanding attention. We humans are nothing without our narratives. Without them, identity becomes vapor, nothing but mist, a ghost slipping between our fingers. We only know who we are by recounting where we've come from, who our ancestors were, the struggles they overcame, and the shameful secrets they tried to bury. Identity is not constructed solely by what we achieve. It's layered in the sediment of the tales we repeat again and again. Consider the Icelandic sagas, great sprawling epics carved from rugged stone, etched in ink upon weathered parchment. Stories of blood feuds, honor, betrayal, and revenge. Names recited like incantations. Egil Skallagrimsson, Grettir the Strong, Gudrunos Viffirsdóttir. Characters etched so vividly that even centuries later you feel their breath against your ear, hear their whispers in the dark. The sagas don't tell stories merely to entertain, they're mirrors reflecting the raw structure of their society. Each tale is a vertebra in Iceland's cultural spine, holding it upright through storms, famines, volcanic eruptions, and invasions. These aren't tales, they are survival manuals. Identity in the sagas isn't gentle, it's brutal. It's forged not through polite conversation or diplomatic maneuvering, but through battle and honor, through vengeance and bloodshed. Your worth is defined not by what you claim, but by what you prove. Honor isn't a virtue, it's oxygen. Without it, you suffocate, invisible and irrelevant. These stories show us identity stripped bare of comforts, demanding courage in the face of annihilation. You prove your identity by standing unflinchingly when others fall away, by staring death in its hungry eyes and refusing to blink. The sagas teach us that words matter precisely because they cannot be taken back. Utter a vow, swear vengeance, or declare love publicly, and you're bound forever to that proclamation. Your life will twist and warp around the gravity of those spoken words. Stories are unforgiving judges. Once released, they'll drag you inevitably towards your fate. Characters in the sagas aren't actors, they're prisoners of their own speech. They understand something our modern world forgets, that every promise shapes reality, that every oath creates a future trajectory from which escape becomes impossible. Consider Egil Skallagrimsson, poet and warrior, whose fierce, raging verses shaped his existence more powerfully than his blade ever did. His identity wasn't just tied to his deeds, but was sculpted by every poem recited around crackling fires, every rhyme etched in cold Icelandic stone. Egil understood words as weapons, careful constructions able to wound or heal, able to immortalize or condemn. His poetry wasn't merely artistic expression, it was legacy, immortality. Words didn't define Egil, they imprisoned him within his own legend. To be remembered was both curse and blessing, a heavy weight shackling him perpetually to expectation and legacy. Then there's Grettir the Strong, a man defiled by strength and defiance. Yet more than his powerful limbs and formidable prowess, Grettir's story is a reminder that identity shaped by reputation is as dangerous as it is powerful. Deeds done once echo eternally. The smallest action reverberates across generations. Grettir's fate was sealed not only by his feats of strength but by stories told about him, embellished whispers that spread faster than wildfire across the frozen terrain. He became trapped within his own myth, forced by his legend to repeat acts of heroism, forever striving to live up to tales already told, forever fighting battles against his own narrative shadow. The sagas remind us that identity is not stable, it's fluid, shifting according to the narrator's whims. Heroes become villains overnight. Honor shifts to shame in the space of a single, carefully chosen word. It's terrifying how fragile our self-concept is when placed in others' mouths. Just as bones can break and splinter, stories fracture and reassemble, twisting reality until truth becomes indistinguishable from lie. Identity isn't singular, it's plural. Every person who recounts your life carves you anew, reshapes your memory in their image. The malleability of identity isn't exclusive to Icelandic sagas. Modernity is just as ruthless. Think of social media, heaven forbid. Modern sagas recorded in real time, identities built or dismantled by tweets, photos, and captions. A person's entire existence compressed into digital fragments, scattered and reassembled by a stranger's commentary. We construct ourselves from this virtual scaffolding, praying desperately that our carefully curated identities remain intact and recognizable. But unlike sagas, digital narratives shift instantaneously. One misstep and the entire structure crumbles. Today's digital legends rise and collapse in seconds, leaving behind only ghostly echoes in algorithmic memory. Yet beneath this brutality lies a profound beauty. Identity built from narrative is communal. We aren't solely responsible for ourselves, we're collective creations, bound intricately to everyone who's ever uttered our name. Identity isn't isolation, it's connection. Every person who repeats our stories weaves themselves into our lives, forming an invisible network of shared identity, mutual responsibility. The sagas understood this communal power, knew instinctively that survival depended on collective remembrance, that identity thrives only in community retelling. Ultimately, the sagas teach us this stark truth. To exist authentically is to accept the vulnerability of living through narrative, to acknowledge that our identities are never fully our own. They're reflections bouncing eternally between storyteller and listener, constantly reshaped, endlessly evolving. Like bones, our identities remain after our bodies vanish, echoes of ourselves persisting in stories retold. The sagas teach us humility before this process, before words, memory, and the terrifying fragility of selfhood. So choose carefully the bones you leave behind. Speak cautiously the stories you tell. For once embedded in the narrative marrow of the world, words outlive their creators. They become artifacts, future relics. Be certain the tale you tell is one worth preserving. Let your saga, like those told beneath Iceland's cold stars, be shaped not merely by bravery or vengeance, but by wisdom, humility, and compassion. Carve an identity from words you won't regret when flesh decays and only stories remain. Memory isn't safe. It never has been. It's no passive photograph pressed between the pages of an album. It's not a soft, gentle nostalgia shimmering in sepia tones. Memory isn't innocent. It isn't neutral. Memory is a blade hidden behind your back, cold steel pressed against the ribs of reality. It is a carefully sharpened weapon wielded ruthlessly by those who understand its true power. If you haven't felt memory cut deep, drawing blood from wounds long forgotten, then you haven't truly remembered. We like to believe memory is our ally, that it stores our treasured moments, preserves our innocence, shelters our dignity. We pretend it gently smooths our past into a story we can comfortably repeat. But memory does not comfort, it confronts. Every act of remembrance is a rebellion against forgetting. Each recollection a grenade tossed into the placid waters of oblivion. Memory explodes complacency, it shatters illusion. It violently insists we face ourselves, demanding we acknowledge the ugliness we've carefully hidden beneath the layers of polite lies. Memory's greatest cruelty is that it refuses to die. And because memory never dies, it becomes the ultimate weapon. Think of dictators who rewrite history, meticulously erasing names from records, toppling statues, altering photographs. Stalin wasn't afraid of tanks or armies as much as he feared memory, the unerasable truth whispered from lips of those who still remembered. Memory is rebellion itself, the greatest threat to tyranny. A single whispered truth can ignite revolutions more fierce and lasting than bullets or bombs. Armies can subdue nations, but memory can topple empires. Consider Rwanda in 1994. Two groups, Hutu and Tutsi, lived intertwined for generations. But memory was twisted, manipulated, sharpened into a blade and handed out freely. Broadcast via radio waves, printed on flyers, murmured in bars and marketplaces. Carefully crafted recollections of past humiliation, oppression and betrayal ignited a firestorm of hatred. Neighbor turned against neighbor, family against family. What drove people to madness wasn't merely the machete. It was memory sharpened into lethal clarity. Memory distorted, weaponized, transformed into justification for massacre. Memory isn't just wielded by dictators or fanatics. Every family harbors its own arsenal. Every Thanksgiving dinner table is laden with unspoken resentments, memories selectively chosen to wound and shame. A single reference, innocuous to outsiders, detonates silently in the heart of a sibling, a parent, a lover. Memory is the quiet killer, slicing more precisely than any blade, exposing vulnerabilities hidden beneath carefully constructed masks. Family narratives aren't benign chronicles, they're strategic deployments of memory, victories and defeats passed down like trophies, grudges polished until they gleam. On a personal level, we weaponize memory against ourselves too. We obsessively replay humiliations, each repetition sharpening the pain. The bitter taste of failure lingers on our tongues, the recollection of past mistakes looped endlessly like a broken record. Memory becomes self-inflicted torture, a knife we willingly twist deeper. Our minds carefully archive every embarrassment, every regret, every whispered criticism. It's curious how we forget joy so easily, but failure, that we retain with surgical precision. Memory is sadistic. It punishes relentlessly, never satisfied until we bleed. Yet memory as a weapon isn't always destructive. It can be powerfully protective, defiant, a shield and sword wielded by oppressed peoples across centuries. Consider how memory served African slaves, torn from their homes and forced across oceans. Stripped of their language, dignity and freedom, yet they preserved fragments of identity. Songs hummed beneath breath, stories whispered in secret. Each memory became an act of resistance. Memory kept alive the dream of freedom. It fueled rebellions, uprisings, and ultimately survival. Memory wasn't passive nostalgia, it was active resistance. Likewise, for indigenous cultures whose lands and lives were stolen, memory is the last remaining territory, the final fortress of dignity and identity. Stories passed down through generations become a protective barrier, resilient against attempts at erasure. The memories embedded in ancestral rituals, in sacred places, resist being extinguished. Memory stands defiant, insisting on existence long after everything physical has vanished. Memory as a weapon is perhaps most potent in its capacity for healing, if wielded carefully, consciously. Consider survivors of trauma, war veterans haunted by combat, victims of abuse burdened by shame. Their recovery hinges on reclaiming and reframing memory, reshaping the weapon into an instrument of liberation. Therapy becomes an act of insurgency against destructive recollections, the deliberate forging of new meaning from past horror. Memory reclaimed is memory disarmed, its power harnessed rather than feared. This reclamation is delicate, precise work. Like a surgeon extracting shrapnel, the painful memories must be carefully disentangled from wounds. They are reshaped, given new context, placed within broader narratives. They never vanish, trauma does not erase, but memory can transform from blade to tool, from weapon to instrument of profound empathy. Those who confront and reshape their painful memories become stronger, wiser, humane. Their stories inspire others, their recollections become guideposts signaling paths towards resilience and dignity. Yet wielding memory is never without risk. It demands courage to face painful truths. It requires humility to recognize the fragility of memory itself, its vulnerability to distortion, self-deception, manipulation. Those who weaponize memory irresponsibly, distorting past events for political gain, manipulating history to provoke fear or hatred, create devastating ripple effects that last generations. Misused memory scars society deeply, breeding mistrust, resentment, violence. The sword is double-edged and once drawn cannot easily be sheathed. In truth, memory as a weapon reveals more about ourselves than the events we recall. How we choose to remember, what we emphasize, ignore, distort, exposes our deepest fears, insecurities, and desires. Memory isn't neutral, it is personal, revealing our inner selves in stark relief. Every act of remembrance is inherently biased, shaped by our needs, our desire for justification or for vengeance or for forgiveness. Memory is never purely factual. It's emotional, psychological, spiritual. It's a mirror held up relentlessly before us. So understand that memory can destroy as readily as it can heal. How we wield it, whether as a blade cutting through deception or a shield protecting dignity, determines our legacy. Will we use memory to liberate or oppress, to confront truth or escape responsibility? Memory's sharpest edge is always turned toward ourselves, reminding us that we must choose carefully the stories we repeat, the narratives we amplify, and the truths we preserve. You think you're just observing, just visiting. You arrive somewhere new, a stranger from somewhere else, stepping onto soil that's thick with history, saturated with stories that have nothing, ostensibly, to do with you. You walk through landscapes that have absorbed centuries of bloodshed, love, and betrayal, raw human experiences that predate your very existence. You come believing yourself an outsider, a neutral party, an innocent witness to history's vast, turbulent drama. But here's your first uncomfortable truth. There is no such thing as neutrality, not when you're dealing with memory, with narrative. From the moment your foot touches that storied ground, you're already implicated, entangled and marked. You're already part of something bigger, something ancient and ongoing that began long before you arrived and that will continue uninterrupted long after you've departed. The very act of witnessing makes you complicit. You're not separate from the saga. You're woven into its fabric simply by being there. This was Iceland for me, a stranger from somewhere else, an outsider stepping onto volcanic soil that steamed beneath my feet. Here was a place where every hill and fjord whispered sagas into the wind, where every rock held memories I couldn't possibly access or fully understand. Here, the landscape itself breathed history, each mountain etched with battles long past, each valley holding the faint echoes of laughter and lamentation. And there I was, standing in the middle of it, feeling uncomfortably intrusive, painfully aware that this story was not mine to claim. Yet I was fascinated, drawn irresistibly closer, seduced by the saga's richness, the depth of its humanity, its brutal honesty. As an outsider, I carried no inherited obligations, no family feuds, no blood debts to repay. But paradoxically, this freedom was itself burdensome. Without roots in this place, my role remained uncertain. Was I simply a spectator, observing from afar, or had I already begun to insert myself into the narrative, merely by being here, by breathing its air, by standing on this ground? To Icelanders, outsiders aren't passive observers. They become temporary custodians of their stories, entrusted with fragments of their collective memory. Responsible, only briefly, for carrying these memories onward. They recognize that each stranger who steps into their world is subtly transformed by it, bearing the weight of stories they never asked for, narratives that reshape them in small, indelible ways. To Icelanders, an outsider isn't just visiting, they're quietly, imperceptibly changed by what they witness. Think about this carefully, this subtle but profound truth. Memory isn't something you merely receive. Memory reaches out, touches you, marks you, reshapes you. To encounter a powerful narrative, even from the outside, is to be transformed by it. You can't remain untouched by the stories you hear, the histories you witness, even if they're not directly yours. Each memory you brush up against leaves an invisible scar, a tiny mark that alters the landscape of your internal self. the story you carry forward about who you are and what you believe. This was my paradox as I wandered through Iceland, through black sand beaches battered by ruthless Atlantic storm, through isolated farms tucked away beneath towering volcanic cliffs. Every interaction, every story shared over cups of damn fine fucking coffee. You Icelanders know how to do coffee, I'll give you that. Every saga recounted in softly accented English resonated with me. I wasn't part of these stories, yet by listening, by witnessing, I became subtly complicit, embedded in their continuation. I began to carry fragments of that narrative forward within myself. Yet the tension persisted. As an outsider, how much could I really claim? How deeply could I honestly connect with memories I hadn't personally inherited, hadn't suffered or celebrated? Was I a thief, taking something that didn't belong to me, or a messenger, helping to carry these tales beyond their original context? In this aspect, I existed in a liminal space, neither fully inside nor completely separate, suspended between witness and participant. But perhaps that's precisely the outsider's role, to live with intention, to embody ambiguity. An outsider sees clearly what locals have stopped noticing, bringing fresh eyes to stories that have become familiar, taken for granted. The outsider's place in the saga is to reflect, to hold up a mirror to a culture, offering perspective and clarity that only distance can provide. Yet the outsider is also changed, inevitably altered by what they see reflected back at them. And in this, I realized something fundamental, that I was not merely observing history, but becoming a part of it. Not because I belong there by blood or birthright, but because narrative itself is fluid, adaptable. Stories shift and stretch to include everyone who encounters them. My outsider's presence, my witness, my questions, had subtly expanded the saga itself, adding tiny ephemeral layers to a narrative that will never truly end. So the question becomes clear and unavoidable. Am I in the story, or am I the story? Perhaps the truth is we are always both. By bearing witness to another's narrative, we inevitably become part of that narrative. Yet simultaneously, we create our own saga, the story of how we've been changed, challenged, and transformed. Each encounter with another culture's memory becomes a chapter in our own ongoing saga, reshaping our identity, altering our trajectory, even if slightly. The outsider's tension, this uncomfortable balance between observation and participation, is exactly where true insight emerges. It's in this discomfort, this uncertainty, that the deepest human truths reveal themselves. Memory, after all, isn't merely inheritance. It's something we actively create through engagement, empathy, and reflection. It's shaped as much by the outsider's fresh perspective as by the insider's inherited obligation. Your own experience as an outsider, no matter where you've traveled, whose stories you've witnessed, is equally transformative. Every memory you've brushed against has altered you subtly, reshaped your internal landscape, influenced the stories you now choose to tell. You can't inherit everything you encounter, but you're never left entirely unchanged. So ask yourself again, am I in the story, or am I the story? The answer will always be both. Your life, your memory, your narrative inevitably intersects and overlaps with those you witness. You're always both observer and participant, outsider and insider, inheritor and creator. Memory doesn't care about your comfort or your definitions. It insists on ambiguity, complexity, and contradiction. You can't remain safely detached. You can't observe from afar. Memory will always reach out, touch you, and reshape you. Right now, you're living in a saga. You might not realize it, caught in the mundane rituals of your daily grind, imprisoned in routines you've allowed to define you, but you are at the center of an epic unfolding quietly beneath the surface. Every choice you make, every mistake you suffer through, every triumph you savor, every heartbreak you bury in secret. All of these form your personal legend. Each moment is another page turned, another paragraph written, each breath a punctuation mark guiding the rhythm of your ongoing narrative. And you can laugh at this idea, which is completely fine because it does sound ridiculous. But, a saga, we've read them. Maybe you've seen them played out on television screens or movie theaters. They're grand, magnificent tales populated by towering heroes, ruthless villains, cataclysmic battles, and eternal vendetta. But your life consists of a tedious commute, awkward silences, and whispered regrets at 3 a.m. So how does that possibly compare? But looking closer, stripping away the glitter and glamour, the special effects and the polished cinematography. Beneath that surface gloss, sagas are stories of struggle, identity, loss and growth, which is exactly like yours. Your saga began the instant you emerged screaming into existence. You were immediately thrust into an inherited narrative, a web of familial expectation, societal norms and cultural pressure. Welcome to the fucking world. The saga didn't wait for your consent. It started writing itself onto your skin the moment you took your first breath. You're carrying legacy whether or not you chose it. You're born into battles already begun, rivalries you didn't instigate, expectations you never asked for. And your story started long before you had a chance to pick up the pen. Every family has its own saga. Within every household, no matter how ordinary or seemingly serene, dramas simmer below polite conversation. Parents silently reliving their regrets through their children. Siblings competing invisibly for approval. Love whispered softly between bouts of shouting. These are not insignificant details. They are epic in scale, personal odysseys playing out quietly behind closed doors. And you, willingly or not, became the protagonist in a tale told before you understood the plot. But sagas aren't defined solely by circumstances thrust upon us. They are shaped by our responses. You are constantly editing, rewriting, revising the saga that is your life. Each decision, no matter how trivial it feels, sends ripples through your personal narrative, reshaping the direction and meaning of your story. Every yes, every no, each moment of hesitation or boldness redirects this course. You wield more power over your saga than you realize. You are author, protagonist, and audience all simultaneously, crafting your life from the messy ink of choice and consequence. Yet most people remain blind to the epic dimension of their lives. They sleepwalk through routine, anesthetized by habit and numbed by predictability. They forget their own power, surrendering control to external circumstances, living as passive characters in somebody else's story. But sagas demand awareness. They require waking up to the full texture and intensity of existence. They demand active participation, conscious choices, courageous acceptance of the consequences of our actions. A saga isn't merely something that happens to you. It's something you choose to live consciously, intentionally, and deliberately. Think of the defining moments in your life, those crossroads. You can recall them now. That moment when you chose risk over safety, love over loneliness, authenticity over conformity. Or perhaps the opposite, when you turned away from something true, accepting comfort instead of challenge, stability instead of adventure. Those decisions didn't merely alter circumstances, they reshaped your entire identity. They sent your saga spiraling off in entirely new directions, creating alternate versions of yourself. Versions that echo quietly in your subconscious, whispering, "What if?" Sagas don't shy away from tragedy, they embrace it. Life's darkness isn't a flaw in your narrative, it's essential. You've suffered loss, experienced betrayal, confronted mortality. Perhaps you've buried loved ones, endured heartbreak that felt lethal, or watched dreams crumble into dust. These aren't failures, they are vital plot points, moments of profound transformation. Pain, sorrow, and grief forge character. They strip away illusion, leaving behind raw, authentic humanity. Tragedy makes your saga real, relatable. Without suffering, your life would lack depth, authenticity, and resilience. But of course, your saga isn't solely defined by darkness. It's also illuminated by joy, blazing, blinding moments when happiness seems tangible, solid enough to grasp. Birthdays spent laughing, love declared boldly beneath the stars, quiet moments of companionship and contentment. These joyous episodes punctuate the darkness, balancing your saga, reminding you why endurance matters. Your saga is woven from these contrasting threads, darkness and light, joy and sorrow. You must embrace both fully to understand your story's beauty and significance. And your saga never ends while you breathe. It constantly evolves, continually unfolding. Even when circumstances feel static, you're still transforming internally, shifting subtly with each experience. As we talked earlier, identity isn't static, it's fluid, reshaped by new insights, encounters, and lessons learned. Your saga is perpetual, infinite in its potential to reinvent itself. Each morning is a blank page waiting to be filled, each night an invitation to reflect, revise, and recommit to your ongoing narrative. Now ask yourself honestly, what saga are you living? Is it authentic, courageous, and honest? Or are you playing someone else's script, living a shadow version of your potential? Are you settling for mediocrity, comfort, and predictability? Or are you daring to live boldly and passionately, embracing vulnerability and risk? Your life demands constant questioning, vigilant self-awareness. Your saga is shaped precisely by how truthfully you answer these questions moment by moment. The sagas teach us that courage isn't heroic acts in dramatic moments. It's daily honesty, quiet authenticity, relentless refusal to compromise who you truly are. To live your saga authentically means embracing imperfection, honoring vulnerability, and confronting fears directly. It demands choosing growth over comfort, truth over illusion, authenticity over social acceptance. It's recognizing that your greatest legacy won't be wealth, status, or achievement, but the authenticity with which you live your unique narrative. So wake up to your life. Recognize the epic saga in each breath, each choice, each interaction. See clearly the power you wield, the profound responsibility you bear toward yourself and others. Your life isn't mundane. It's extraordinary precisely because it's yours alone. Your saga, however quiet or seemingly ordinary, contains all the drama, complexity, and beauty of the greatest epics ever told. It matters immensely. Start writing consciously. Tell the story that reflects your truth, not someone else's expectations. Embrace your struggles courageously. Celebrate your joys fully. Acknowledge your regrets openly. And remember always, your life is the most important story you'll ever tell. So here we are then, you and I, standing at the edge of this narrative we've shared together. And if you've listened, then something in you has shifted, just slightly, imperceptibly perhaps, but it's there, a small crack in the surface of your understanding, a quiet recognition echoing beneath your ribs. You're never merely a passive listener. Every story you encounter, every memory you touch reshaped you. You are complicit now, part of something larger, older, more powerful than your solitary existence. Memory is insidious. It sneaks in quietly, settles itself deep into your marrow. You don't even notice it's happening, but suddenly you're different. You've absorbed fragments of someone else's story, traces of ancient battles, echoes of forgotten celebrations. You carry sagas within you, hidden beneath layers of mundane routine and polite conversation. Memory whispers through your blood, threads itself silently into your identity, and you become the story, whether you ask for it or not. Throughout our journey, we've explored landscapes alive with recollection, earths saturated by generations of whispered truths. We've confronted words hardened into bone, unbreakable, eternal reminders of who we are and who we've chosen to become. We face memory as a weapon, dangerous, powerful, yet also protective and redemptive. We've wrestled with our place as outsiders, standing at the blurred boundary between observation and participation, between the narrative we inherit and the one we shape. But ultimately, we've come face to face with this fundamental, uncomfortable truth. Your life itself is a saga unfolding relentlessly. Every moment, every quiet triumph, every hidden regret, every whispered dream is part of an epic narrative that matters. Your story isn't separate from the grand tapestry of humanity. It's woven intricately within it. You are no longer a spectator, you're a storyteller, actively shaping the narrative you carry forward. So ask yourself honestly, what story are you telling with your life? Is it a tale worth repeating? Is it honest, courageous? Are you consciously choosing your narrative, or have you surrendered control, drifting passively through existence? These questions demand relentless attention. Memory demands accountability. It insists that you acknowledge your complicity in the narratives you perpetuate about yourselves, about others, and about the world itself. Now here is your uncomfortable challenge, my lovelies. Embrace your power as a storyteller. Recognize your role in choosing what narratives to amplify, what histories to preserve, and what memories to confront or bury. Your decisions ripple outward, reshaping reality around you and altering the landscape of your identity and your community. You are responsible, now more than ever, for the stories you tell and those you choose to forget. Remember, stories aren't passive. Memory isn't neutral. It shapes societies, defines identities, ignites wars, and fuels revolutions. Every act of remembrance is an act of rebellion, resistance against forgetting, an assertion of existence itself. Your life, the saga you're living, matters immensely because it's yours alone to tell. You're crafting your legacy moment by moment and choice by choice. So take this responsibility seriously. Take it joyfully. Understand that the narratives you embrace, reject, or rewrite shape the world. They alter history. They affect everyone around you, reaching across generations. And most importantly, they shape you, fundamentally and permanently. So as you step away from this episode, carry this truth closely. Memory is alive. It breathes, pulses, changes, and it speaks through landscapes, through sagas, through you. Listen carefully, choose consciously, live authentically. Dare to remember courageously, even when memory hurts. Because your life, your story, your saga, it matters. Thank you for joining me on this little philosophical expedition today. You know that I deeply appreciate your presence and your attention. And if you found anything in this episode useful, or you think that someone else might find it interesting as well, then please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Here comes that hideous marketing bullshit, because we have to do this, unfortunately. But we are on social media, as much as I loathe those platforms. You can find us on Instagram, on X, and on TikTok with the handle @TheObservingEye. We're on YouTube, where you can go and watch our videos, which is youtube.com/@TheObservingEye. And we've also got a beautiful website on Substack, which is theobservingeye.com. So all of those platforms, you can go and chat to us and engage and comment and all the usual things that you can do with these social spaces. I've also got an email, which I'm not entirely sure is a good idea, but you can email me at david@theobservingeye.com with your questions or suggestions or anything you want to get off your chest about philosophy. Not therapy, I can't be your therapist, but I'm happy to field philosophical questions and existential horrors. That's all good. And I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can, which is normally within a day or so. Thanks everybody, take care, much love, and I'll catch you soon.